about that. Okay, well, we're so glad to have you on here with us this evening. We really appreciate that you're willing to join us on a Monday night when I'm sure you have other busy stuff to do. So thanks for being here, everyone. I am Emily Willadiger. I'm a clinical psychologist in the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at Rush. I am the lead psychologist on the Building Early Connections team, which works with the youngest kids and their families. We see kids infancy through age 8. And some of you may have already interacted with our team in some capacity. So we're really glad to be able to do the work that we do. Tonight, we are going to be talking about a really pertinent subject, which is how we cope with chronic uncertainty and how we can help our kids cope. And with me to present on this topic is my colleague, Sarah. And Sarah Jolie is a psychology extern, so a psychologist in training and on our team. And she, with me, provides brief consultation with caregivers and individual therapy for young kids, as well as group therapy for caregivers. She is a 4th-year doctoral student in the clinical psychology program at Loyola University in Chicago. And her clinical and research interests focus on developing culturally informed stress and trauma interventions that promote resiliency among immigrant and refugee families. So I'm so glad to have Sarah here with me. And I will, in one moment, turn it over to her. Just a plug for this webinar series quickly. This is the first of 3 webinars. The link that you used to register for this one should have registered you for all of them. So there are 2 more coming, one next week on Monday evening as well, which focuses on understanding kids' behavior. And then the following week, we'll talk about understanding children's development. Throughout this webinar, please feel free to enter questions in the Q&A box, and we'll probably hold on to them until the very end, and then we'll address them in a Q&A session. So we're glad to have you here, and I'll turn it over to Sarah for now.
Great, thank you so much, Emily, and thank you to all of you for being here on Monday night. We really appreciate it. So I will get us started. Great, so just a quick overview of what we'll discuss today. We'll touch on the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on children's well-being, and we'll focus a lot on coping, on what you can do to help your child learn how to cope, as well as what you can do to take care of yourself as well with all this constant uncertainty. So to start on the impact of the pandemic, it has absolutely turned our normal upside down. And what we know as normal has changed. And I don't know if we all have learned what a normal is yet. But what this really underscores is that constant uncertainty, things are always changing. And this has really disrupted routines, how families go about their day-to-day, which can lead to a lot of worry and anxiety for parents as well as for children. And so what we are seeing too is it's impacting some children's mood. So we're seeing lower mood, issues with depression, as well as anxiety. And it is having an impact on behavior as well. So we are seeing more behavioral outbursts from children, and parents struggling to cope with this and help their children deal with these behavioral outbursts as well. And another component of the pandemic, due to the nature of this virus, is that it has really limited how we socialize. And for young children, it's very important to get that opportunity, as that's a way that they can learn and know how to interact with others. So because we've had limited opportunities for younger children, we are seeing that they haven't had a chance to practice their social skills. And for some kids, this has led to some more social anxiety of being more nervous, playing with peers or being around unfamiliar adults. And for our young children, we are seeing a lot more separation anxiety. So they're feeling more nervous leaving their parents' side to go to school, go to a family member's house. And it's a challenge for all parents if your child is always wanting to be by your side. But despite all of these issues I'm bringing up, we all are still seeing in our clinical work the amazing resilience that children and their parents are showing in dealing with all this stress. So I want to keep highlighting that even though there is a lot of things out of our control, families are working so hard to take care of their children and are helping them learn to adjust and overcome all these challenges. So to start, this is very relevant for right now of changing mask mandates. So in the last month or so in Illinois, we have seen that there's been more flexibility and not as much restrictions as we've had before with mask mandates. So for some schools, it has become optional to wear one. And it's a mix of emotions and reactions that we're hearing from kids and parents about this. So overall, it could be a difficult adjustment, especially for young children. Some of them have done their school experience only knowing with a mask on, and now they're being asked to take it off. Some kids are super excited. They've been wanting to take their masks off and kind of have that kind of more normal interaction with others of seeing their faces. But we're also seeing a lot of kids be really nervous. That mask gives them a lot of comfort. It's part of their routine. And now to learn something new, some of them can be pretty uncomfortable with it. So what we are telling families is, as these things change, we want you to communicate with your children and with your family of how do you go about this. So as a family, you decide in what areas do we mask? Are there in certain areas that we don't mask, or just going over how does our family handle this? Every family is unique in how they want to go about it. And we want to help children understand that, to give them some expectations of what they're supposed to do and how they should treat others. So importantly with that, we really want to focus on communicating to children that we want to respect other people's choices as well. So even though our family may decide in a certain way to mask or not, we may see other people that do it differently, and that is okay. And so we want to start building that communication for them to help them understand when they're in settings when they're not with you, they know how their family handles it, what their parents expect of them, and that will bring them a lot of comfort in what to do when you're not around. And of course, as a big component for today's webinar is we want to talk about how can you teach your child to cope. And children really soak in their environment. They are always observing. And so you as caregivers have a lot of power in what you can teach your children and show them with how to cope. So we tell our parents a lot of, you can model the ways that you cope. Your children are learning to cope and respond in the same way. And that's a lot of power and responsibility for parents. But it's also exciting because that means that you can provide your children the tools they need to get by with lots of stress. So these are the three that we'll go over more in detail, but talking about deep breathing strategies, instilling messages of hope with your kids, as well as being strategic about the media that you consume. So to start with deep breathing, because we work in early childhood, we talk about belly breathing. And as that says, you can't see me right now, but we want you to teach your children, this is how you take some deep breaths to help you calm down. So how you teach them, we're going to put our hands on our stomach and we're going to take a slow, deep breath in with our nose. And you're going to tell your children, look how your hands move on your belly when you do that. And then they'll slowly exhale through their mouth. And again, they're seeing how their hands move on their belly. And that's what tells them, oh, this is how you're breathing deeply. What's really important is when you're starting a new strategy, you're teaching your kids a new thing to do. The first time, and really the first couple of times you do it, you want to do it in a moment where everyone's calm. It's a good family moment. If this is the first time you're doing it, you do not want to do it in a really stressful time, because it's really hard to learn something new when you are stressed, overwhelmed, frustrated. So this will be key for the kids of you introduce this to them in a moment that they're open to learn something new. And you're going to practice. You're going to practice a ton. You're going to practice as a family. So every, once a day, hey, let's take a couple deep breaths together. Show me how your hands move on your belly. And that practice is key, because then eventually, come a stressful moment, you can tell your child, hey, how about we take some deep breaths together? And then your child will remember, right, we've been doing this for a couple of weeks, and it will come more easily to them to do it. And then that will help them decrease their stress, the distress that they're feeling, and be more likely to try again. And the goal is that the more they do this with you, the more likely they are to do it on their own without your help. So once they're at daycare, they're at school, they're getting frustrated, they'll learn over time, I can take a couple deep breaths by myself. So here are some examples that you can do for deep breathing. Emily and I are big fans of Elmo here. So there is a YouTube video and you can just Google Elmo belly breathing and this comes up. It's a song that lots of kids love to, and it's pretty easy and you can do it with them to practice. So that might be really helpful first introduction to belly breathing. If this is the first time you've done it as a parent too. But belly breathing is not the only way you can breathe deeply. There's a bunch of other cool strategies and kids are always teaching us new ones, honestly, when they come talk to us. One very common one is the 5-finger breathing. So you put one hand up and then you breathe in as you go up and you breathe out as you go down. And you repeat over and over until you get through your hand. And for some kids, this is really helpful because it could involve their hands. There's a more movement related to it, so they might do better with that. But we also have another one that some kids really love, and it's called bubble breaths. And so you instruct the children to take a breath as they were going to blow a really nice big bubble. And to get a big bubble, we know that we have to take some very even and calm breaths for that to happen. And so for some kids, visualizing blowing a bubble might be a helpful way to get started on taking deep breaths. So you can experiment, see what your child likes, what makes them excited. As long as you're finding ways to help your child take some deep breaths and just stop, take a moment to take a couple deep breaths, that's huge in itself. And it might be fun, a strategy for the family, like, hey, let's figure out which one we like the best and that we can keep doing together. Now, for the messages of hope, we want to make sure that we're really validating children's feelings. This is a really hard time for us all, but for a lot of kids, there's just so much that is unknown to them and that can cause really big emotions for them, and we want to normalize that. So the first one that we do first is validate and identify with your children's feelings. So first pinpointing what that emotion is, right? So it could be you feel really nervous, right? You feel really nervous about not wearing a mask anymore. That must be hard. And you can also model that by sharing your feelings too. sometimes I get really upset too. I get really frustrated also. And that will help them understand, hey, I'm not alone in this. Other people I care about feel the same way as I do. And we also want to use family coping statements. So there is a lot of comfort in knowing your family is there for you. So even though we're going under constant uncertainty, we want to keep reminding children, no matter what, your family's here to support you and care for you, and we stick together. Because that's one thing within our control, right, that we can do. So it can look things like, this is a really hard time right now, but we can get through it together as a family. We are here to support each other. Or even, we've gone through something really hard before. I know that we can do this again together as a family. Now for media. This is a hard one. This is really hard because we all have our phones with us. There's always alerts going off, and unfortunately that's just the way our society has come to this point, that we're always having live alerts and always have information readily available to us. And there's a lot of benefits to that, but there's also so many downsides to that too, because when do you choose to stop? So we want you to be mindful of this and to set limits, not just for your child, but for yourself for your well-being. And that can be difficult, but you might want to take a moment to reflect, how do I do this? Do I put do not disturb on after a certain time, right? So you're not getting those notifications at night. Or how much of the news are you watching, right? Do you set a certain limit? You know what, 1 hour a day is all I can take. And we want you to be very careful and just mindful, what content are you watching around your children? So kids are very observant, and they are picking up on things. So just be strategic of what things you decide to watch in front of your children, because they might ask questions about that and you might have to address it. So of course, we don't want you to live in a bubble, a secluded bubble. We understand that is not possible, but that does mean that you're going to provide, developmentally appropriate explanations for your children of what is happening. So one thing is the mask mandate. You can sit down with your children and explain to them, hey, this is happening, the rules are changing, but this is how our family handles it. So overall, the big emphasis, you can provide some information, what is happening, but this is how we keep safe, this is how our family takes care of each other, and always reminding children, we are here for each other. Another strategy that is really helpful in these times is sticking to routines and schedules as best as you can. There is so much out of parents' control right now, and we understand that. And that causes a lot of anxiety, not just for parents, but for kids as well. And really the only thing as parents that for sure you have some control over is, how do you structure your home? So we want you to create routines that are doable for your family, that are consistent as best as possible. So what does that mean? Getting up, do you get up at the same time to go to school or daycare in the morning? When you come home, do you, what do you do after school or daycare? What does bedtime look like? Do you always take a bath? Do you get to read a book each night? And try and think of ways how much you can provide consistency to your children so that they know what's expected, what is coming next. Because that really helps when in the outside world, there is a lot that they don't know is going to happen. And so part of this, why we talk a lot about bedtime routines, that is so important, is because we want your children to get the most sleep that they can. And the more consistent your sleep routine is, the easier it will be for your child. And so we show an example here of what a bedtime routine can look like, right? So we have some quiet play first, then we take a bath, we get in our PJs, brush our teeth, and so on. For some families and children, it helps to create visuals of the schedules, right? So maybe bedtime is really hard in the house. There's a bunch of kids, everyone's coming back from sports, lots of things to do. It can get really hectic. So for your youngest child, it might be really helpful to create a visual schedule, right? Of, hey, this is what we do when we get home and get ready for bed. And that can really help with the consistency. Now for parents, we also are mindful, right, of we want you to set realistic expectations. Parents are not superhuman, they're not superheroes, you're still people yourselves. So we want you to set expectations that are doable for your family, that work with your schedules. And so thinking that through, right, of how does our bed routine look like based on our work schedules, based on the kids' schedules, things like that. And be honest, right? It's okay. We understand that, what are the limitations? What are the things that make this challenging, and recognizing that? And that might mean some compromise and problem solving. If there are many caregivers in the house, right? How do we kind of take on this work together? And just showing that kindness to yourselves, especially as you're trying new routines. It might take some time to get used to it. There may be some bumps in the road, but just being gentle with yourself as you're doing it, and being not setting too high of a standard for yourself so you're not so harsh, will be really important too. Because again, your children are watching and you want them to see you be graceful with yourself. And I touched on socializing at the beginning, but socializing with others really helps with coping too, but it helps with a lot of important skills for children, especially in early childhood. So we recognize there's a lot of limits and potential barriers depending on family circumstances on how you can socialize during the pandemic. But we want you to try as best as you can, and being creative. So, spring is coming eventually. So that might help in thinking, what are even some outside things that we can do so we can be in contact with other children. If your family is not comfortable yet, maybe socializing inside. But overall, what we are seeing is really helping kids is when their parents involve them in activities where other children are involved. So that could look like sports, park district classes like art classes or dance classes, even going to the park before and after school so that they can see other kids and get to play with them. And if you can, setting up play dates with other children so that your children get practice of playing, interacting with other kids, because this really helps them understand social norms and how to interact with different individuals. And for kids that are a bit more anxious, this is really important, especially because they might be saying, I don't want to, or I'm scared. I don't know how to play with other kids. And for a lot of parents, it's our instinct. We want to protect our kids, right? So we're saying, oh, they don't want to. I don't want to cause them distress. Okay, we won't go to the park. But we do want to encourage this behavior in kids to try these things, even though it can be scary. So if your child, they were a little nervous, but they decided, okay, we can go to the park after school, and they tried it, we want you to praise that. Like, wow, you did such a great job. You were so brave. You play with new kids, even though you were nervous. I'm so proud of you. You had so much fun. And so as much as you can, if your kids are a bit more nervous, a bit more worried, to really praise their efforts in socializing with other kids, other adults, will really provide encouragement to try again in the future. And it's very helpful for us to go over how we communicate with our children too. And in early childhood, this is really key. So these are some communication techniques that you can use to discuss with your child. So one is, we talk about labeled praise. So we all praise children, but it really helps if we're more specific, because that will encourage them to want to do that thing again, right? So it can be, you did a really great job finishing your chores today. That's amazing. I love that you worked so quietly on your schoolwork. And that will motivate your kids to want to do that specific thing again, because my parent just praised me for that and that felt really good. So I'll probably do that one more time. Even how you show with your physical attentiveness really helps with kids. What is your body language when you're talking with your child, right? Are you providing eye contact? Are you nodding as they're talking? Are you putting your phone to the side so you're only focusing on them? Even physically turning your body so that you can show them as much as you can. My attention is on you. And then for kids, this makes them feel really safe and wow, I have my parents' full attention in this moment. Another strategy is you can paraphrase. So you're using your own words to summarize what your child just told you. You could say, what I'm hearing you say is, it seems like, it sounds like you're telling me XYZ. And that tells kids, hey, my parent understands me right now. And another strategy we can try is validation. So you validate what your child is telling you from their perspective. And like, I can see this can be really frustrating. And you know what? I know that you're doing the best that you can right now. And this gives kids reassurance and affirms that, hey, my parent sees what I'm doing and that I'm trying right now. Okay, so now we are at a quick poll here that Emily is going to pop up for us for all of you to input. So what techniques with communication are you already good at? And then of course, to think about which ones do I want to try? I want to improve more on. And you can click more than one here. So we'll give you guys a minute to do those and then we will see the results. And while people are finishing up, we're reading your questions and we will address them at the end.
I see most folks have participated. We'll give it just a few more seconds, but I did want to thank those of you who are putting your questions in the chat. So we will get to those for sure. Okay. I'm going to end the poll, show everyone what we chose.
Great, so we see a lot of you are using labeled praise, physical attentiveness, and some of you want to try using some more labeled praise and physical attentiveness. And what else here? Ooh, paraphrasing. Yeah, so a lot of you are saying you want to start trying this strategy too. And yeah, it's a good, when we think about how we talk with kids, right? Sometimes we forget that there are some strategies that we can be using with them so that they feel heard by us too. So thank you everyone for taking this poll with us. So I've been talking a bunch about how you're modeling for your children, what you're doing. They're learning so much from you. And so keep this in mind for your self-care as well. Self-care always goes out the window in the order of everything that gets to get done. And we hear our parents that, hey, like it's hard. You have so much to do in your days that thinking that you usually are your last priorities, that you can do self-care for yourself, and that your child will learn a lot from this too. So what this means is you're modeling healthy habits for your child. And so that makes it easier for them of, hey, I could do this too. And so Emily's will show us eventually a lot more slides, but even just in this visual, we can see some things that help us. Of just even you come up with a quick self-care routine for yourself. Even if you can looking up interests for yourself when you have time. Even recognizing toxic stress, right, in your life and being mindful of that are things that you can start doing for your self-care.
Great, thanks, Sarah. So, I think we hear about self-care a lot, and we talk about self-care a lot, and it's a kind of nebulous term for a lot of us, in that we have a lot of competing needs throughout the day. Some of us have young kids who need our full attention seemingly all the time. And so when do we have time to take care of ourselves? What can we do that will actually make an impact? So the truth is, there are little things that we can do throughout the day that add up. And when I say self-care, I mean, yes, it would be lovely if we could all take, a few days and go to some luxurious spa somewhere and really immerse ourselves in all of the, the things that would offer. It's not realistic. But what is more realistic is being mindful throughout the day of little pockets of time that you can devote to yourself. So we have a bunch of suggestions here that I'm just going to go through. And the key here is that some of these will resonate with some people and not with others. Some might resonate with you, and you can sort of add it to your toolbox. It might not work all the time, but it might work sometimes. So the first of these stress management strategies involves relaxing your body and your mind. And this could be only a minute long in various pockets throughout the day, a handful of minutes to practice some of what Sarah was talking about earlier. Deep breathing alone can decrease a person's physiological arousal and help manage stress. It's something that we do all day long. We breathe, it keeps us going, but we're not really cognizant of it. But becoming a bit more cognizant of it, taking slow, deep breaths, maybe 5 of them, can really have an impact. Scanning your body for areas of tension. I know when I'm tense, I like my shoulders kind of creep up on me, and being aware of that and noticing it and kind of intentionally pulling them down. Being aware of where you hold tension in your body by scanning it. And I'll get to this, but there are apps that help you with this. Progressive muscle relaxation is a fancy way of saying tensing up certain areas of your body purposefully. I know I was just talking about how that happens, kind of naturally, but purposefully tensing it up and then relaxing it purposefully, right? And then purposefully tensing up your fists and relaxing them. The goal there is that it actually can de-stress your body as well. Meditation is something that a lot of people, it's become sort of a pop psychology type of thing, but if done well, can really help with stress management. And it's something that's I find very challenging, but with the help of an app can be a little bit more manageable. Closing your eyes and imagining your special place, a favorite vacation that you've taken, a favorite memory, really transporting yourself to that time can be a helpful way to reset during a stressful moment. So I mentioned there are some apps here. Mind Shift is one I really like. It's free. Breathe is free. Headspace is paid, but I think it's worthwhile to explore the App Store or even explore YouTube. YouTube has a lot of videos that can guide you through some of these exercises. Right, next. So exercise, something that I think a lot of us intend to do, and it just falls away when we have other competing needs. This is something that doesn't have to take hours and hours of your day. No one is insisting that you go and train for a triathlon here. These are things that could be done in the context of your own home, even gentle stretching or yoga. Could do this for 10 minutes and that alone can de-stress you. Going for a walk around the block in a moment of free time. If you work, that could be on your lunch hour. Running is something that works for some people and not for others, and is more doable for some people than others. Just walking up and down some flights of stairs gets your heart rate kind of going and has a positive impact on your mood. Dancing, I think we practice a lot of dance parties in our sessions because they make kids and families feel good. So just putting on a favorite song and dancing. It feels a little funny in the moment, and that alone can have a positive impact on your mood. Doing some jumping jacks, similar kind of thing, doesn't have to take too long. And push-ups as well. For some people, for me, they're on my knees, but you could still feel strong and like you've kind of done something with your body, and that tends to feel good. So our next category is engaging fully in enjoyable or distracting activities. So again, this could be something that is only a handful of minutes if you have a pocket of time throughout the day. What is that? What could we recommend here? Reading, if it's reading before bed, if that's your only moment of time, something that's enjoyable to you, listening to a podcast, or listening to music. I don't think we actually have it on here, but listening to music too, on your way to work, on your way to school with your child, playing some music, drinking a cup of coffee or tea, and really being aware of how it tastes. We tend to rush through our drinks and our meals without noticing how they make us feel. A cup of coffee to me feels really good, tastes really good. And I'm not always in the kind of headspace to really notice it, but when I do, it could help with my mood. Journaling, doing puzzles, cooking and baking, and engaging in these activities with some intentionality rather than what I think we all tend to do typically, which is not pay so much attention when we're cooking our dinner. We're just doing 10 other things and then our dinner's ready. And it's sort of like we go on autopilot and we miss out on the experience. Drawing and doodling and painting, playing an instrument, singing, playing board games, all of these things could help with mood, and they don't have to, like I said, they don't have to take hours and hours of your time. Netflix is on here, and we have the caveat, not too much. It is certainly an enjoyable thing, and just again, it's tempting to sort of get sucked into it and then like go into autopilot and 5 hours later emerge from a Netflix binge. And so maybe not that, but maybe doing it more mindfully. Social media similarly, right? Social media is a way that people connect to one another and keep up with each other, and it can be good in moderate doses. So bringing the spa to your home, like I said, it would be ideal if we could all just leave our lives and go to a spa every once in a while, but not always possible. So we can do these things that happen at a spa at home. And what that means is really engaging your 5 senses in different ways. So vision, when we talk about engaging your vision, looking at photos that are appealing to you, looking out the window, noticing what you see, watching a video of a calm scene. Again, YouTube can be helpful with that. Really can alleviate some of the pent-up tension that we carry with us all the time. Sound. There we go. Listening to some music. When we talk about music, we might use it in different ways. To boost our mood, it might be upbeat, but maybe if we want to calm ourselves down, maybe we're listening to soothing music. Smell. Putting on your favorite lotion or aftershave, lighting a candle, incense. Really, again, getting back to that coffee, paying attention to how that coffee smells in the morning when it's freshly brewed. Taste, similarly, right? Eating a favorite food or a drink, again, in moderation, and really noticing what it is that you're eating and the flavor. And remarkably, when we do this, when we slow down our eating and our drinking, we tend to not need to eat or drink as much because we are more aware of what we're doing and it is more satisfying. And then touch, taking a long bath or shower, taking care of your hygiene, painting your nails, putting on makeup if that interests you, put a cold cloth on your head, changing into comfortable clothing, cozy clothing, petting an animal. These things, they're little things that I know, sometimes when I give this talk, like these aren't like kind of earth-shattering ideas, but they are really little things that could be sprinkled throughout the day that enhance our mood and decrease our stress. Setting a date, engaging with social support. So just as it's important to continue to build your child's socialization practice, we as humans are social creatures. We need it. We need support from other people. And there are various ways throughout this pandemic that has been really challenging. And I feel hopeful that we are in a phase now where it's a little less challenging. But I think the emphasis on it still remains the same, that pulling in your friends and your family and whoever can support you socially is important for stress management. So whether that is calling or texting or going on Zoom or going on a webinar or FaceTiming your friends or family, being intentional about doing that regularly. Going for a walk with a friend, parental play dates at the park. So if, kind of killing two birds with one stone potentially, if you want to increase the time that you spend at the park with your child to increase their socialization, maybe that's an opportunity for you as well. Virtual meals, Zoom meals, or in-person meals, depending on comfort level, and clubs, fantasy sports with friends, all of these things could be helpful. And then the last of our categories is getting in touch with nature. And again, this doesn't require you to go, hike Mount Kilimanjaro. This could be in the context of your day-to-day lives and could take 10 minutes or so, or even less probably. So leave the house at least one time per day. I left this on here. This came from an earlier webinar in the height of the COVID pandemic, peak of it, where people weren't leaving their houses much. And I think it's still important to keep in mind. On weekends, we can spend all day in our house, and it's important to get out. Going for a walk or sitting on your stoop, noticing the flowers that you see. So noticing the things in nature around you. Flowers are, it's starting here. they're blooming, even though it's cold. But feeling the crisp air on your skin, smelling the air, noticing the sun. Today was quite sunny. Just kind of noticing that is helpful sometimes. And listening to the birds chirping and noticing other kind of animal life around you when you're outside. These little things can have an impact. Okay, so a second and final poll for those of you on here still. I just listed a ton of different little things that you could do to manage stress. And I want to get a sense of which of these categories could you work on this week. So let me launch this poll. Okay, so if you could indicate, we only let you choose one. Which one are you going to try to work on this week? Most of you have already answered. Give it a few more seconds. Let's see. So it looks like we have some interest in the relaxation strategies and exercise and socializing and paying attention to nature. Yes, thank you. Thank you for participating in this poll. I think if I had to pick mine for the week, maybe Sarah, you could pick yours too. I am going to choose nature. I think I tend to, if it's cold out, I just stay inside. And it is always helpful for me to get some fresh air and notice the things around me outside. What do you think, Sarah?
I'm gonna choose exercise. I have found that it really helps with all the tension I hold in my body to release that.
Yeah, great. Okay, so let's see. I believe we are nearing the end. Yes, so we are, we've reached our Q&A portion. And so I've been aggregating the questions that we've been receiving, and we can start addressing them now. And before we do that, I would say this, you can find us in a number of ways for more assistance if necessary. So our website is on here. We recognize, though, that this is just, a preliminary 1-hour webinar, not really individualized to your needs or your child's needs. And if you are interested in more support, if you have more questions or concerns that pertain to your particular child, you can either ask them right now as we embark on this Q&A, or you can give us a call at our number, and we will do our best to set up an appointment with you so that we can problem solve some of the things that are coming up. So just going to go ahead and remind myself of our questions. So our first question was about whether this slideshow is in Spanish. And the answer is, at the moment, no. However, we soon, I don't have a date here, but we eventually will have a webinar series that we launch that is for Spanish language speakers. So it will involve the help of interpreter services. So that will be advertised much like this one was. And so I would recommend bringing any Spanish speaking caregivers or friends to that one. However, part 2 in the answer is that we do have 2 Spanish speaking clinicians on the Building Early Connections team, Sarah being one of them. So for those of you interested, who asked this question, I would recommend giving us a call and we can set up an appointment. If your family is interested, the Spanish speakers in your family interested in talking to us, we can deliver some of these tips in an appointment in Spanish. So I hope that that helps with that question. The second question, and I think not everyone saw this one. So we were asked, what can you do if your child won't sit down at all? Trouble with sitting. So I want to turn it to Sarah to see if you have any suggestions initially, and then I can chime in.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, this obviously depends on the specific family and child, on what they're dealing with. But for in early childhood, this does come up a lot. It can be really difficult. So some of the things that we do is we want to give the opportunity for the child to learn how to do this. And it goes bit by bit. So some strategies that we try is, if you have a very fidgety child, high activity level, they struggle with these moments that they have to stay still, dinner time, homework. What we say one thing that can help is we use like visual timers. So there are these kind of sand clocks for different spurts of time, and you help your child, because some children have a really hard time understanding, like, well, 5 minutes, like, what do you want me to sit still for 5 minutes, but really only 30 seconds have passed. So you can introduce these visual timers. They're on Amazon, I think like $15 and under, different spurts of time. And you discuss with your child, hey, you know, we're gonna sit and do homework together for 5 minutes, and you're gonna be seated, your butt's on the chair, and you're gonna be sitting down. We're gonna do this together, and you're gonna practice that as much as you can, and you're gonna be praising your child, like, wow, like, you did a really great job. Look at you, like, you didn't get up at all in this time, and you're praising that and encouraging them that they can do more. And over time, you can start building, right? So 5 minutes, your child's getting much better at that. I know that you can do 10 minutes. We're gonna work up to that. And so that could be one strategy to help. Well, it's kind of two strategies of building in that practice with that visual timer to help them, but also praising all the effort that is going into that to encourage your child to do it again in the future.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah. So the other thing that I'll just add on to that, and Sarah said exactly what I was going to say. The one other thing I would say is that again, a little plug for our webinar next week, which talks about behavior and why kids do what they do or don't do stuff that we want them to do, like sitting. That will go into more of an explanation and some strategies that could be employed based on why you think your child is having trouble sitting. So moving along, another question. My child falls out all the time. So, tantrums, falls on the ground, won't listen to my directions, won't listen at all. So we see this a lot. This is a common question that comes up with our families. And I would say, again, a plug for next week's webinar. But the tease is this, when children aren't listening, trying to understand what drives that behavior and whether there are ways we can reward them for listening, and in very reasonable expectations. So like Sarah was saying, if your child's having trouble sitting, we wouldn't want to start with, okay, now you have to start with an hour, you're sitting for an hour. We would start very, very small. So same with listening, we would kind of lower the expectations to be where the child is functioning currently, and then incentivize them with some sort of reward for listening to us. So that could look like a different, a whole host of different things, but it might be something like, if you follow my directions and you do this thing that I ask you to do, I'm going to give you a sticker, and 5 stickers gets you a trip to the dollar store, or, you know, or something that is going to be motivating to your child. The tantruming is a tough one, and I don't know the age of the child in question here, but that's, you know, there's some developmental normalcy to that. Kids who can't communicate what they want or their needs because they haven't fully developed language are often, and they have big emotions, they often throw temper tantrums. And so we, to some degree, have to ride that out with them by doing some of those positive communication techniques that Sarah was highlighting earlier, by validating how, you know, it seems like you're really angry that you can't play with the tablet anymore. I know it's really hard to give up something that you like. And then minimizing the engagement that you give them when they're throwing their tantrum. Because the thing about attention from families, and I know I'm not doing this justice. Oh, he's 2. Thank you. I just saw that. Yeah, so this is developmentally normal for a 2-year-old. And at the same time, acknowledging how they might be feeling, saying that you can talk again when they're calm, that, and staying nearby to make sure that they stay safe, but not engaging with them too much while they're throwing the tantrum is going to be the strategy. Because what I was saying is that engaging when a child is tantruming, their minds are shut off at that moment. It's not particularly useful to try to talk to them, number one. And sometimes when we give too much attention to things, they keep happening over and over again, we as adults. And so using your attention wisely in those moments to help, you know, ride it out, essentially. And then when they are calm, re-engaging with them. But again, more to come, I think, next week in the next webinar. What would you add anything, Sarah, to what I said about tantrums and listening?
Yeah, you said everything I would have said. And then, you know, something, once your child helps themselves to calm down, and in the ideal world, you've been working with your child to start to use deep breathing, right? So that could be a reminder you give them of, like, how about you take some deep breaths, you calm yourself down. You know, once you're calmer, we can talk. Your child works on calming down, or they ride out the tantrum, right? After, if they had some effort in calming themselves, you can praise that. Like, I saw you try to take some deep breaths. I'm really proud how you were trying to calm your body. You're doing a really great job with that. And just encouraging those efforts so that, again, they're more likely to try and do them again in the future.
Thank you. Okay, and then the final question we got is, what should we do if our child continues to reject the, I think, praise, the praise, right? You're giving him or her labeled praise, and they don't seem to like it. They're like, and they reject it. And what should you do then? So this is something that comes up sometimes for kids who don't like to feel like they're the center of attention. That when you sort of highlight what they're doing well, they may feel uncomfortable with that. I would recommend, and I want to see what Sarah thinks here too, is we want to continue, we don't want to just like stop acknowledging good behavior. That's not a good strategy, because what happens then is the child doesn't actually learn, oh, this is actually a good thing that I should keep doing. We run the risk of them just stopping that good behavior that we want to see. So we want to keep acknowledging it, but maybe we acknowledge it in a different sort of way for that child, rather than doing the labeled praise thing where we say, I love how quietly you are playing, you know, in the corner, right? Maybe your child seems to react poorly to something like that. And so maybe we do it a little bit more like surreptitiously. We go over to our child and we might either whisper in their ear, good job, playing quietly, right? Or we give them a fist bump and like a wink and a thumbs up. It's not exactly, we're not being specific about their behavior, which is the best of the options. But if we can do it in a bit of a sneaky kind of way where we're still acknowledging it, I think that would be my recommendation. What do you think, Sarah?
I was gonna say the same, because I know working with younger kids, when I give praise, I go, 100 over the top, like, wow. And some kids that, it's uncomfortable to them. So I know of me changing my tone and of like, wow, like you did a really great job with that. Thank you so much. Instead of my usual, oh my goodness, that was incredible. Some kids don't like that, and that's okay. And I think that can work well with Emily's strategy of, in a quieter voice, kind of whispering it to them if that works better. But the other idea I was having too, and I don't know family and child, so, but it could also help to model what it's like to receive praise.
Mm-hmm.
So, if there's another adult, another caregiver involved in life, like what does it mean to praise each other in front of your children? Of like, Mom, I really appreciate everything you've been doing for us today, or that you like made it to soccer team for everyone. Thank you so much. You brought snacks. Everyone was really happy. Maybe dad gives that praise and so on. And that's really powerful in itself, because for adults, it can be really uncomfortable to accept praise. So if your child can see you say, thank you, I appreciate that. You take it, even though it maybe feels uncomfortable to receive praise. Your children can learn a lot from that too, and see that it's okay and it's normal to accept it. So that could be one other idea to try too.
I love that. That's a really good idea. So modeling what we want to see from our kids. It's a challenging thing, and can really go a long way though. So those were all of our questions, and we have reached our time. I just want to thank everyone again, for sticking with us. It's late on a Monday. We so appreciate it. We really appreciate all of the engagement with the polls and the questions. And like I said, if there are ongoing questions, or you think that you could benefit from an individual consultation with either the two of us or another one of our team members, please do give us a call. With that, I will say good night and thank you again. And we hope to see you next week, Monday at 7. We'll talk about behavior. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.